Today we're gonna go over eye rigging in Live2D. So there's a few parts we're gonna go over, which are the eye open close, eye smile, eyeball movement, eyebrow movement, eye physics, and eyeball depth on head angles. Alright, so as you can see, I haven't done anything to the eye yet, aside from meshing it. So we're starting from scratch. So the way you do this very much depends on how the eye is drawn. Now I drew this myself, so apologies for the horrific art you are witnessing. But let's let's start this. So if you have a model in front of you, which has all of this, the eyeball is sticking out of the eye, which we do not want. We want to clip this to the eye white. But if we clip this to the eye white, all of this outside of the lines will be visible. So there is a very simple solution for that. Live2D does not allow double clipping, but it does allow inverted clipping. So what I mean by that? We are gonna take the eye white. And then we're just going to clip everything to the eye white. And you gotta clip the shine to it as well, because otherwise the shine will be visible through the eye close, which we do not want. Alright, that is everything clipped to the eye white. And as you can see, we're still going past the borders here. So, a way to fix this. You take the eye white, you copy it, Control C, and then Control V, and then we drag this all the way up, right below the eye shades and the eye shine, right here. Now, what we are going to do is we're gonna go down and take the eyeball base. We're gonna copy the ID and we're gonna paste it on the clipping ID on the eye white you just dragged up. Now this is what that looks like, but then we reverse mask. And in my case, I need the eyeball lines as well, otherwise it gets a bit jaggy over there. So what you want to do with the reverse clipping ID for this is just comma, and then paste the other one as well. And that fixes that. Now you can see there's a little bit of a line here. And there's an easy way to fix that. I have a short video on how to fix clipping edges on my channel as well, which I will link here, but we're gonna fix that real quick. All right, so that is how you do that. And that is what it looks like now. Okay, so we can finally start the rigging itself. Eye open. So first, I want to grab the upper eye, which is gonna be the eye shine up here, lash shine, lash up, lash sides, lashes, eyelid is part of that as well. And let's grab the eye shade. And this is the upper eye. So we're gonna make a deformer for that. And it doesn't need to be a lot of divisions. Let's say 25 to 25 and see how that looks. We're gonna call this eye up. Also, you might have noticed a lack of other eye, but we are just going to copy and paste this when it's done. So what we want to do is we want to bind that on 2 points to the... This is not the left side. the IR open. And then we right click, edit parameter, and we want this to be 1.3. Okay. And then we want to bind it on the 1.3 as well. There we go. Okay, so what we do with the 1.3 is open the eye further. Like if you open your eyes wide, that's what it will track. Like that. Then we want the side of the eye to still be on the eye wide. There we go. And then we want the lower lash line. And then we call this eye down. And then we bind it on all 3 parameter points we just made. And then on the 1.3, we open this up. Then we take the eye white, both of them, both of the eye whites we created, and we make a deformer and we call that eye white. Then we bind that. And then we deform it so that it fits. All right. And that is all we have to do on that. Actually, no, it is not, because we need the eyebrow as well. We call this eyebrow position. What we're gonna do is when the eye opens, we're gonna drag the eyebrow up and make sure that is all smooth, especially when you have eyebrows of a different shape. Dragging it up like that will probably leave edges, so you gotta smooth that out. Okay, now we want to close the eye. And this is very straightforward. You usually see people use the path deformer for this. Like you take the eyelash and you just place a path deformer and you start like deforming this. As you can see, my eyelash is on 2 layers. So that's already not really something I can do. You can, of course, select both layers and then use the path deformer, but it gets complicated that way, it gets messy that way. So what I like to do is I like to just create a deformer. Call it lash up. And now we want the divisions on this to be a little bit tighter. So the width we will crank up to 35. By the way, this is a personal preference, but I like to use deformers for everything. I don't really like deforming on the mesh itself. So just so you know, that's a bit of a preference, but it makes everything easier later on if you have to add things. Alright, so we bind that and then we go to the 0.0 position. And then we control page down. Make sure you click on the deformer before you do that to make sure that Live2D knows that it's selected, because sometimes it doesn't register. Okay, so control page down. This is the temporary deform tool. You can find it in modeling and temporary deform tool as well. But this is the temporary path deformer. So what we want to do is we want to create the path and then we want to deform it. And this is right above the bottom lash, because the bottom lash is going to be moving up. Okay, so I think this is good. I like this. As you can see, it's still smooth. No jagged edges. What I want to do though is get the eye shine in there as well. Easy. All right, so we now take the lashes, make a deformer, call it lashes, and we bind that. And we just drag this down so it folds into itself, and you're gonna see why in a moment. It's to create the depth when we close the eyes. Now, if you want the lashes to look a little bit fuller, you can copy the eyelashes. So I will give a demonstration. So we copy the eyelashes, we drag them out of lashes, and we call these lashes 2. So if we bind that, we're gonna be dragging this down, and then we're gonna be deforming this. There we go. So you have a double lash layer at the closing, so it looks a lot fuller. That's just a small little trick. Okay, then we take the lash side, and then we just squish this. Let's see, lash up looks a little bit awkward there, so I'm gonna drag this in. There we go. And then lashes 2, I think, is the problem here. Yes, it is. Okay, cool. Make sure the lash side stays connected when it's closing. There we go. And then we take the eye down. It's already bound, so that's good. And then we just make sure this fits. There we go. We also need the eyelid. Usually you'll see a lot more shading on eyelids. However, I'm not very good at drawing, so we can just pull this down. But if there's like eyeshadow on the model, you gotta deform that to fit the eye closed as well. Okay, then we take the eye white and we squish this. Easy squish. Make sure that fits. You can like manually pull these, or you can just use the brush tool. And that fits perfectly. Okay. Now we want to drag this down. Oh, we can keep that 5 by 5. There we go. And then eye shade, we drag that down as well. So you can see that the shading comes down with the eyelids. Okay. Then we want the last one, the eyebrow, to come down 2. There we go. And that is how you open and close an eye. It's that easy. Now, for the eye smile, we want to take the eye down and bind it to smile. Now, I use 3 parameter points. And the reason why I do this is because the 0.5 becomes the neutral expression, so it'll kind of hang between like the smile position and the not smile position, and sometimes it can look a little bit awkward. So I like to save the smile for actual like full 1.0. So this is kind of a safeguard for me so that it doesn't look strange. I don't know how to describe that any further, but we're dragging this up. Now we take the eye white and we make sure that is adjusted. Okay. Now what we want to do with the eye down, because this will pull the eye down up. Now what we want to do when the eye goes open like this is we want to go to the 0.5 and the 1.0, and we want to Control-Shift-C. Then when we pull this into the 1.3 and this into the 1.0, we want to Control-Shift-V. So that still looks like the eye opens wide, but not as wide as when it's not on the smile parameter. That's an easy way to do that. And then we adjust the eye white. The reason why we don't copy and paste that is because it is adjusted at the top. Technically, you could just select the bottom and copy that part, but, you know, too much effort in this case. Okay, now we want the eye closed. I'm going to take the lash up, the lashes and the lashes too, and I'll bind those to the eye smile. And now on the eye open, we Control-Shift-C and Control-Shift-V. And this one's easy. We just lower this and then adjust. And that is fine, though I do want to pull the lashes down a bit. There we go. And then for the lash line, we want to pull this in a little bit. And then we kind of just adjust the sides, make sure to bind that. Alright, then we take the eye down. And we fit this. Now let's grab the eye white. Shape that properly. And that is looking good. Now we adjust everything else, like the eye shine, the eye shade, and make sure you bind all of this on smile, because I have forgotten to do that very often. Okay, and that is looking good. So now we have the eye open and the eye smile, and I'm going through this as fast as I possibly can. All right, now we have the eyeball. So we want to select all of the eyeball layers without the shine. And I think that is it. So we're gonna call this eyeball. Let's see. Yes, that is perfect. Actually, I want these layers inside of the eyeball deformer. Okay, cool. So, eyeball X, very straightforward. We look this direction. We want to decrease the size here a little. And then we look that direction. And we want to do the same, just decrease the size a little. Now we want to do the same with Y. We look up. And we look down. Now, sounds simple, and we're gonna control 4, which is synthesize corners, which can also be found in this menu. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to get the pupil. So in this case, this eye has like the middle division, and I want to grab that as well. And I think that is it. So let's call this pupil. Let's see. Yes, that is fine. So when we look this way to create some depth, we want to drag this over. As you can see, it immediately creates depth. Okay, and there is the depth, and we're gonna do this for Y as well. We're gonna be dragging this down. And up. Smooth that out. And as I said, this very much depends on your like style of the model, the eye style, because for most of them they won't have the middle division, so you can just deform the pupil freely. For me, I have to be a little bit more careful. Okay, so we synthesize corners on that, make sure that looks good, and it does. We can see the depth. Okay. Well, you could make that more dramatic, but for right now, I think that is fine. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the eye white, eye down, and eye up. We're gonna say eyeball XY. And this is the eye layers without the eyeball. We're gonna bind this to eyeball X. Gonna drag this over. So we get a little bit of a wiggle movement going on here in the eyeball Y. You want to drag this up. And down. Synthesize corners. And there is the basic eyeball movement. And there's a reason why we're leaving the eye shine alone, and that's because we're going to be fixing that with physics. There's going to be a little bit of a delay on the eye shine tracking. And now we start working on the eyebrows. So under eyebrow position, we want to make another deformer. And we're calling this brow angle. So we're gonna bind this to brow RY. We're gonna lift this, but I'm gonna be using the brush tool to lift it, so it doesn't look like rigid. And then we're gonna lower it on the -1. And then for brow angle, what we want to do is we want to lift the inside, but not the outside. And with the way these brows are drawn, it's a little bit easier. But it's the same concept for regular eyebrows as well. Okay, now we synthesize the corners on that. And then we take the eyeball XY and we create another deformer on top of it. Eyebrow angle. Okay, so what we're gonna do, when the brow goes up, the eye goes up. When the brow goes down, the eye goes down. And then with angle, when the inside of the eyebrow goes up, the inside of the eye goes up. And when it goes down, the eye goes down. Okay, so we synthesize corners on that. And this is what that looks like. And this is for that little bit of extra subtle eye movement when the eyebrows move. You don't actively see it, but it's like a subtle bit of movement to make the facial expressions look less stiff. Then we take the eyebrow and we are gonna say brow form. And this is the brow form. And this is easy when we're on the 0.1. We want to make this go up. And when we're on the -1, we want to deform this down. Okay. I can probably make that look a little bit better. I can probably make that look a little bit better. A lot of this is my own art skills being at fault. So with a prettier model, you're gonna have an easier time. Okay, and we have brow angles, forms, everything. So we can move on to eye physics. So let's take the eye shine. And create a deformer. And we're going to create new parameters for this because these are all going to be on physics. So first, I highlights X, And then we can create a custom ID for this. It's always good to have a custom ID and have like consistent naming conventions for them. It can be anything you want, as long as it's somewhat consistent. So for me, when it's like physics based, I always put phys in front of my ID. So for me, it's phys iLight X. And this is -1 to 1. Okay. And then we replicate this and we set the X to the Y. And when the eyeball X goes there, the highlights overshoot it a little bit. You want the highlights to be a little bit further than the eye movements. And we do the same with the Y. And then we synthesize corners. So this is doing its own thing. We'll be going into the physics window later. If you're just trying to test things, I would suggest like putting the physics in immediately and see how it looks. But I already know how this is gonna look, so I don't need to constantly go into the physics window and test it out. Now that we are still on highlights, highlights. This is the right eye, so R1. Phys eye lights R1. And we're gonna blend shape on this because we want R2 and R3. For the physics, I will be doing a lot of them. Just a heads up. For this video, I will be covering more complex physics for the eyes, but this is not a necessity. I just want you guys to know that this is not a necessity, but I will show it anyway in case you're at a more advanced level and you're interested in going into complex physics. So, for the R1, I want to take all of these. I'm gonna create quick deformers. Usually you want to name them, but I will not right now. And I want to pull these into the center and then out of the center. And I want to do that with all of these. We're pulling into the center and out of the center. And then for R2, we're just gonna circle this around the middle. Alright, so as you can see, that is twisting around. And then for the R3, we're gonna do a size enhancement. So we're gonna make it bigger and smaller. We're gonna make sure that looks fluid. Yes, it does. Okay, and this is what that looks like. Now on the same parameters, we want to take the shine in the middle, which is in the pupil deformer. And what we want to do is on the R3, we want to rotate this. Let's see, for the inside shine, there we go. We want to place this on R1. So all three of the layers are rotating on a different parameter. So it won't be rotating at the same pace. There will be a little bit of a delay between all of them. Speaking of delay, we're going to be doing something similar for the eyeball bounce. So, eye bounce right 1. This is still -1 to 1, and it's still blend shape. And we are going to be replicating the parameter and just changing the number. So we want R1, R2, and R3. Okay, so we're going to be taking a few of the eyeball layers, and this is purely vibes based, but I'm leaving the gradient out of it, and I am leaving the reflective light at the top out of it. And I'm taking the rest, and I'm gonna say eyeball physics. And then we're gonna do eye bounce R1. And what I want to do is I want to stretch this vertically and then squash it vertically. Stretch and squash, and we do the same on R2. We stretch it horizontally. I'm gonna need to adjust that. And then we squash horizontally. All right. Now we go into pupil. Let's take the eye division, and we want to make sure that is fine. Okay. We had to adjust that a little bit. Although I should have separated this in the art, but we can get around this. There we go. Okay. And that looks good. So in pupil, we want to grab the inside, so not the divider. So we want the pupil lines, pupil shine. We want to take this shine, but not the one around. We say pupil physics. Now what we want to do here is we want to start on the R2. And we pull vertically and squash vertically. And on the R3, we pull horizontally and squash horizontally. That's gonna give the movement like a lot more complexity. I'm pretty sure I have a very, very old video on my channel where I showed like eye physics that I was so proud of at the time. I look at it now and it's not great, but you know what? I was proud of it at the time, and I think that's valuable. I think my feelings were valid even though I've improved. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is lash bounce R1. So physics lash bounce R1. And this is still -1 to 1 because we're working on the eyes. We're going to blend shape that. And then we replicate it, and the same as before, we want R1 to R3. For now, we want to take the eye up, eye down, and eye white, and we want to make a deformer and call this lash physics. Cool. So up, down, up, down, oh, and then this side, up, down. That's gonna be fairly subtle. Just so you know, that will be fairly subtle. And then we want lashes. Lashes bounce R1 is lashes R1 blend shape. You don't have to blend shape that because we're only gonna be doing 2, but I just like to blend shape things so I don't have to remember to synthesize corners on everything we're about to bind to this. So in this model art, I only have 3 lashes and 3 at the bottom. But in other models, you might see a lot more lashes, and hopefully the lashes are individually separated. Otherwise, Godspeed to you. So we're gonna grab the lashes individually. Another reason why it's good to create deformers for everything and not do a path deformer on the mesh itself is because if one eye, for example, has dark lashes and the other eye has like light lashes, if you have that kind of contrast, and if you copy it over and you want to like retain the layers within the deformers, having deformers do all of the deforming is so much easier. It is so much easier because you can just drag all of the textures inside of your already deformed deformers. If that makes sense to you. Which is why I never deform on the mesh itself. And I just don't like it. I don't like it. Okay, so temporary path deformer. You guys remember how to do that? Control page down. Okay. Let me just anchor this down for a moment and then do this. And then I forgot. You know what? Yeah, I did forget about that. Okay, gotta grab this one as well. Okay, let's grab both of these. See if this works. It does. Okay, I remembered correctly. We want to deform these. If you just have both of them selected, you can select multiple deformers with the shift key. Just have them both selected and you can deform them at the same time. And then we want bounce R2 and we gotta reselect both of them because otherwise it won't register that you have them selected. I think Live2D should do something about that. And then you want to swing them over. Cool. And for this one, I want to do extended interpolation, ellipse, and put that on 3 points. It's just to make it a little bit smoother. It is not required, but it sure is handy. Okay, then we anchor the bottom down. Select tool, by the way, select the bottom, and then Control-Shift-C. I sped through that a little bit too quickly and I apologize. Control-Shift-V to paste that and anchor it down. Okay, and then we want to do the same with all of the other lashes. So we're gonna speed through this real quick because it's just the same thing. Okay, and that is that done. And now we do the bottom lashes. And I think those are on a singular layer because of the way they are drawn. But we can just do something simple with that. Yeah, okay. So we create a layer for that. On the R1, we create a very small brush, which, by the way, if you hold B and then drag, you can change the size of your brush. So we're just going to do that and then drag it to the other side. And then on the R2, we're gonna do the same with the tips. We just drag it over. Not required, but a little bit extra bounce is always nice. Okay. And then the last thing we want to do on the physics is the eye size. Now, when we open our eyes wide on this model, we want the size of the eyeball to get smaller for that like anime effect, right? So we're gonna be doing that on physics. So I'm gonna say eye size right. This is phys eye size R. Okay. And then we want to take the eyeball. We don't take the shine with it. You know what? Let's take the shine with that. That is a preference thing, by the way. You can take the shine with that or you cannot. For this model, though, a lot of the shine is on the edges, so I do want to take the shine with this. Okay. And we say this is eye size. Cool. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna fit that. Actually, hold on. I did something wrong. So the minimum on this should be 0. The maximum is 1.0 and the default is 0.7. I did a lot of experimenting with this early on when I tried to get this effect, and this specific setup seemed to work for me. So don't ask me how it works, it just does. It's a lot of experimenting. And then we go to the 0.7, we put a dot down there, because this is the neutral position. And then when we go to the 1.0, we make the eye smaller. And then on the 0, we make the eye a little bit bigger. Make sure there's no hiccups here, and that looks fine. Okay. So we're gonna save that, because now we're gonna put in the eye physics. So we're gonna go into physics settings, and settings of cursor tracking. I am going to turn the angles off for a second, and just have the eyeball on. So as you can see, the eyeball tracks perfectly fine. We're gonna add eye shine X. So we want the shine to be tracking. And since we already set up all of our parameters for the physics, this is going to be fine. And I have a preset called slow delay, which is duration 10, shaking influence 0.6, reaction time 0.7, and convergence 1. Okay, then for the inputs, we add eyeball X. And this is going to be angle effective 100. The angle is already fine in the input, so we don't mess with that. So on the outputs, we are going to be adding eye highlights X. And then we just keep it to one side for a while until it stabilizes. And then we increase. As you can see, the eye shine is now going with it. And you can make this faster if you want. That would be reaction time and convergence. So if you want this faster, just mess with those two settings. But I like it to be on a slow delay. Okay, and then we duplicate this and we say eye shine Y. So on the input, we're gonna say eyeball Y. And on the output, I highlight Y. And now it tracks perfectly fine. The next one is gonna be the bounce physics. So I write bounce. And we are gonna leave the input preset empty and physics model preset. I have a preset called high bounce, and I have 3 next to it because it's 3 pendulums. And these are my settings. All of them are duration 10, shaking influence 0.9, reaction time 0.8, convergence 1.5. Now for the input settings. We want this to be IR open and IR smile. And both of these are position. For IR open, I want this to be 70. For IR smile, I want this to be 30. And then we go to output settings. And for this, we want highlights R123, eye bounce R123, lash bounce R123, lashes R1 and 2. And that is it. Okay. And now we assign everything to the correct pendulum. So just go on the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. There we go. And to test this, all you need to do is drag this. As you can see, very strong. Those are some very strong physics. Okay, while everything is still exaggerated, let's break down what is happening here. So as you can see, the eye bounce is doing its own thing. The pupil has a little bit of a delay compared to the iris. The eye shine has a wiggle bounce because of the position change on the first pendulum, the rotation on the second pendulum, and the size change on the third pendulum. So it has a good amount of bounce to it. If you ever want to change that, you could switch up you could switch up the pendulum order. For example, we can have this on 1, this on 2, and this on 3. And that will change what happens there. See? That'll make it align a little bit more with the pupil there. So you can do that. It is entirely up to you what you prefer. I think it is completely okay to have fun with Live2D. Just play it fast and loose, see what you like. Just have fun with it. You know, it's not that serious. Okay. So this is obviously very, very strong physics. We want to tone that down a little bit. That should be better. The thing that'll probably bother you is the amount the eye itself wiggles here. So we are definitely going to tone that down. So that is the lash bounce. So you can change the effectiveness and you can set this to, for example, let's say 50%. We want this to be half the amount of bounce as it is right now. And as you can see, that actually did become half the amount of bounce. If you want to decrease it even further, you can. It's always good to rig in the exaggerated movements and then tone it down in the physics. So you have options of scaling. And that actually looks good. I like it on the 30. I can tone this one down a little bit further, the R3. Okay, and that looks good. So we have one more physics thing to do. So we want eye size right. We leave the input blank and then the physics model preset. I want this to be another, not hair, slow delay. I want this to be another slow delay. So that is the same as we used for the eye shine. And we want to say this is IR open, which is angle 100. And then on the output, we say eye size R. And then we just leave it on the end here for a while, so it can have the maximum output, and then we increase. And that's what it does when we open the eyes all the way. Has a little bit of a delay to it, so that if you accidentally open your eyes a little wider, it doesn't go all the way immediately. I just like the delay on it. Some people prefer to not have the delay on it, and in that case, again, reaction time and convergence. The last thing we need to do before we copy all of this over is the angles. And I'm gonna show you why. How flat does that look? How flat does that look? And this isn't helping. So we're gonna change that. We're gonna go to pupil, and this is already bound to X and Y. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new deformer on top, and we say pupil angle. Now, if you want like full control over it, you could take the pupil and bind it on the angle X and Y for the head as well. And then you can manually adjust on every single point. I don't like to do that. Unless I am working on a commission where I need to be very precise about it, I do not like to do that. So we're just gonna do this with a different deformer. So we're gonna bind this to the head X. By the way, if you want to see the way I did the head angles on this specific model, because this is my test model, if you want to see how I did the head angles on this specific model, I have a video about it. The eyes are going to look a bit different in that video, but that is because the eye layers were not separated at all. The eye layers in that one were not separated because that wasn't the point of the video. Okay. So we want to pull this back when we look this way. And there is the depth. And for this, we want to pull it over to this side. Also, dent. Don't worry about the dent. That is a gamer dent. Okay. And that has created some depth in that. And if we do this, you can see it's looking a little bit weird, but for the sake of doing things quickly, this does work. Okay. And then on the head Y, we're gonna pull this down. And then when looking down, we're gonna pull this up. And as you can see, we have some depth to it now. Okay. So we save that. And now we get to the point where we have to copy all of this over. Right, so we have the left eye here, which does exist. So we're gonna say eye left temp, as in temporary, because we are going to get rid of that. Right, so we want to open every single one of our deformers. Make sure everything is open. We don't want to miss anything. Now we select all of it. And we Control C and Control V. And then we right click without doing anything. Just don't move anything, just right click. And then we press flip. And we want to flip horizontally. And we want to say not eyeball X. We leave eyeball X alone. And I highlight X. Those two we leave alone. And I think head X we should also select. I'm not entirely sure about that, but let's go on a hunch and say we also need head X to be selected here. Okay. And that is flipped. And it is not in the right position. So we take IR and see if that is bound to anything. And it is not. So we can shuffle that over. There we go. And we can turn IL temp off again. And this is IL. Cool. Now let's say the eyelashes on this side are a completely different color and you don't want it copied completely. What you want to do, let me give this a different color so we can be on the same page. So what we want to do is make sure to adjust your layer order. That might be important. So we place this over here. Look, it's a different color now. Multiply color and screen color, by the way, can let you adjust the color of your textures to some degree. So we want this texture, but these deformers. Since we've used deformers for everything, we can just drag and drop into lash up. And now, as you can see, that is correct. So that is how you do that. You just drag and drop because you've already done the deformers, so you can just drag into the deformers. Now, everything is still gonna be on IR, so we want to right click on your IR open and select, and this selects all of the layers. And we want to scroll down to IR and hold control, and then select all of the layers in the IR, which will deselect them. So you only have this side, and then you right click on the IR open and you select change. And then you go to IL open. Ooh, before I do that, I almost forgot. Edit parameter on IL open, because the maximum here should be 1.3. Okay, now you can change them. Now you can switch it over to IL. So this is the IL and this is the IR. And we do that on everything that we have separated between left and right. So we do this on the smile, the eyebrows, and for the physics, you're just gonna have to create new physics for the left instead of the right. And what I like to do is for example, highlights R1, is I replicate the parameter and I edit it and I change the R to an L. So this is L1 instead of R1, and the rest of the name is completely the same so that Live2D can recognize, okay, these are like the same naming conventions. And we just do that, and then we replicate from here to get 2, replicate, and 3. By the way, my nose has been getting stuffier throughout this video. You have no idea how long I've been recording. For you guys, it's not going to be as long. For me, it's been 2 hours. I just want you to realize that rigging does take a little bit of time. Alright, I am going to skip through the rest because I have explained how to basically do everything. You just copy the left over that are currently on the right parameters, and then you do the physics. You create new parameters with the same naming convention for the left side as well. So we're gonna skip through that real quick. All right, and with that done, we can now save. Don't forget to save, and we can go into physics settings, and we can go to IR bounce. And we duplicate this, and we call it IL bounce. And this is IL open and IL smile. Now, assuming you have retained your naming conventions from right to left, all you have to do is click on eye highlights, change R1 to L1. And this should come up. Similar change candidates already exist. Live2D is smart enough to recognize if the naming convention is the same. So we click yes, and that automatically switched over. So now we have the bounce. Okay, and then we go to eye size R, duplicate, eye size L, and we basically do the same. We change R open to IL open, and the output settings eye size R to eye size L. And there we go. If you want the lashes to show through the hair, I know I didn't say that we were going to be covering this, but you know what? We're going to be covering this. If you want the eyebrows and lashes to show through the hair, all we have to do is take the eyebrow, the lashes. Let's just grab all of these. And let's do one side for now. You'll get the point. We copy, we paste, and we drag these above the hair in the layer order. And all we have to do is decrease the opacity of that. And as you can see, there's a little bit of resistance there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab the lash up, we copy the ID for that, we put it in clipping mask and reverse mask. And we do that for everything. And then for the lashes that are behind everything, what we have to do is we have to copy that over as well. So we copy this to the top one, comma, copy this ID to the one on top, comma, paste. Copy the ID to the one on top, copy, paste. There we go. See a little bit more resistance here, so it's this one, I think. There we go. And that is how you do that. That is how you let everything kind of show through the hair without having to make the hair transparent. That is my updated eye tutorial. I hope this helped, and I will see you next time. Bye guys!